Welcome. Hi. How are you?
Thank you.
Welcome, Gurinder. What a heartwarming, amazing film.
Thank you. Thank you.
I love the fact that you use Springsteen's music, but the lyrics actually fuel the narrative. They're not just used to score the movie. They actually propel the narrative. You know, can you tell us about that choice?
Absolutely. Yeah, it was really important that I wasn't making a jukebox film. You know, I didn't want to make that. And the film is about words and how words, the meaning of words, how important they are to Javed as a writer. But at the same time, Bruce's words being so inspiring and touching him. And so I was quite forensic with how I selected the songs that I used. And then I started breaking down the lyrics into dialogue. So there'd be scenes where you'd have, say, Javed, father, and then Bruce, you know, and then those were his lyrics. So yeah, so it was very planned, very much planned.
And when did you make the choice that the lyrics were actually going to be projected onto the screen?
Oh, from the beginning. I knew that I wanted to try and do something different, and I had to make that moment big for when he
the epiphany
moment, yeah. And I knew the film stood or fell by that scene, so I knew that I had to get it right. And so it wasn't easy. I mean, I worked on it quite a lot in the edit as well. But I liked the idea of, literally, it was just a projector. We typed the lyrics up, and then we just projected them on buildings. But what we also had was lots of wind machines that day because of the storm, and also lots of dry leaves blowing around. And so it was. So that's what made you realise you weren't quite sure. And then I really loved it when we projected against the different apartment blocks in that building. So everything moved around, and so it just felt like he was being surrounded. And I think what I was trying to go for was that sometimes when you hear a song, you know, it just encompasses you all over. I was trying to get that feeling.
And the storm of 1987, the Great Storm that affected all of England, why did you make that choice that evening, connecting those two?
Because it happened in 1987, and so it made sense to, you know, use that dramatically, you know, for the epiphany moment.
I mean, I love the fact that there's a storm brewing that evening, but then there's also another storm happening in the town in Luton with the right wing, you know, protests at the same time, and you balance it. You know, there is an entertainment aspect, but the political aspect is very important. And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, when I sit down to, you know, choose what film I'm going to make, you know, I don't mean this to sound pretentious, but I always say, okay, what can I do that will change the world to be a better place? And that's what I always try and do. And I think that comes out of the fact of who I am, where I grew up, and the reason I made this film now is because I was very upset with what was happening with Brexit in England, and there was so much xenophobia on the streets, and I was shocked where it was coming from, and I think that's why I chose this, that you know, for that reason. But also, you know, I wanted to pay homage to our parents, and you know, what our parents had gone through, if you like, but just kept their heads down and got on with it, you know. And I think that if you come from that kind of background, I mean, this is why I think it's important that when people talk about diversity and diversity storytelling and all that, there's a reason why if you're going to tell those stories, that they have to come from the hearts and minds of the people who experience the world from that perspective. Because what that means is that you get such a sort of intimate inside view of like what it's like to be spat at, you know, or what it's like to. I mean, I grew up in a corner shop, and what it's like to not know if the next customer is going to come in and hurt your parents or hurt you. You know, you don't know what's going to happen, so you live with that. But at the same time, you don't want to be defined by that. You know, that's not your entire life, that's part of it. And you might experience something like that, but then the next hour, you might be having a laugh with your friends, or you might be, you know, in a very loving situation. And that's why, for me, I like to show that darkness, but then you know, as we say, on a spin of a sixpence, you know, change it into suddenly being in a more comedic setting, or more human setting, or a warm setting. And I think that's the reality of our lives, is that we do go from this to that, you know, very quickly. And the same is true of women's existence. You know, something really horrible can happen to us. Someone can shout at us, someone can touch us, you know, in a public place or something, and then the next minute we'll be with friends and, you know, we're in a different place. And I think that is the reality of a lot of people, but not a lot of people who get to make films and tell stories from that point of view, so you often don't see that reality.
The wedding sequence that coincides with the NF,
Yeah.
I don't want to use the term rally, but the manifestation. What was that difficult to shoot with all the racial slurs on the wall and
Yeah. Well, the thing about something that was both gratifying and annoying was that the crew refused to write the racist slogans on the walls, and they were like, "No, we can't. No, we can't do that." I remember my standby art director was a gay guy, Owen, and I refused to do the swastika. I'm refusing. I can't do it. So I took the can and I said, "Well, I'll do the swastika." And so myself and the dad, Kulvinder, he goes, "I'll bloody do it," you know. So it was the dad and me who went round writing "Packies go home" and all this sort of stuff. I think because my crew refused to do it. So that was quite funny. That was like quite good. Things have changed, but also annoying because I had to get up and go graffiti.
But you're leading by example.
But then the worse than that was the actual march, because we got all the extras in, and so they were all extras, you know, playing fascists, you know, and then we also had the other people who were anti them, you know, and the first shot we did a big wide shot from 3 angles of the whole scene, and when they first marched. And we're chanting, like everybody just stopped dead cold because it was so real and it felt so real. It took us right back to the 80s. And I mean, I was at my monitor and everyone around me just suddenly went silent. And then we were like, wow, that feels very, very real. And then we did it again and then did another take. And then we were getting ready to do another take from a different angle, and an AD sent a message through the monitor, the transistor, and said, "There's a problem. We can't get the extras to do it." And then I went down to see what was wrong, and they basically said, you know, we don't want to be fascists. We don't want to. We don't want to be racist. We can't do it. And I said, well, you're acting. And they go, I know, but we don't like it when people shout at us. And, you know, and we don't like saying those bad things. And I mean, it was genuinely like, it was hard. And so I was like, okay, How am I going to get this? Because I need more fascists, you know, I need the close-ups. And so I just did a pep talk with all of them. And I just said, okay, the point is the reason we show this is because we don't want this to happen again. But we also want to show people what it was like. And so what you're doing is really important for the recording of history at this particular time. And I'd really appreciate it if you just dug deep and, you know, let's do it again. And, you know, and it's important for the film, and let's do it like you did the first one, good old pep talk. And then they all sort of went, okay, you know. And then they all stood there, and I said, right, come on, let's go. And then like, in the ranking the National Journal, like that. I said, come on, guys. And then they were like, no, we can't. And then I went, all right, I'll start. So I went, if they're black, send them back. So then I started doing all the racist chant. If they're black, send them back. And then I started chanting. Then people started filming me chanting on their phones. So it was a right old mess. But then finally I said, look, you will only have to do it twice more, and then we're going to stop. And that's exactly what we did. So we did it twice more so we could get the close-ups and all the rest of it. But some people did say that some of the people were acting and that they were actually skinheads from that time. And some people overheard one guy say to another that, this is what it was like in the good old days. You know, before we used to get our head kicks in, our heads kicked in. Very complex. Britain is very complex.
The story is so personal and extremely specific.
Yeah.
But it does has this wonderful universality where you always. Is that something that you were aware of, that I wanted to have universal appeal, but it is very, you keep it very specific. And
I think that's the best way to have universal appeal, is to tell a very specific story. The more specific you are, the more universal it is. And I did the same with Bend It Like Beckham. You know, I made that so specific to my experience and my mum and dad. You know, that is my mum and dad in that film. And, you know, that the whole thing about the mum, my mum was obsessed with the fact that I should make Indian food properly. And that's all, that dialogue is hers, and the dad's dialogue. My dad was like, you know, want you to go out, want you to fight, you know, do your own thing, go for it. You know, it's all, so I think when you write from truth and reality, that's, I think, what makes it universal. And this is Safraz's story, and it's very specific to Safraz. And he was a writer then and is now, and he wrote all the poems. All the poems you see on the walls, those are all Safraz's poems. You know, I went through all those poems myself and turned some of them into dialogue. And it was very cathartic for him because, you know, his dad died when he was 23, so he never got to say all these things that he would have said to his dad. And so that's very moving. But I think that it's, the story is specific, but it's also universal because it's, everybody needs approval from their parents, and every son needs approval from their father. You know, and if you don't get it, you know, it's a universal truth. And one of the saddest things for me in making this movie was that I did get to meet Bruce, obviously. And it was, you know, he carries that sadness with him, you know, the fact that his dad never sat him down and said, well done, son, I'm proud of you.
And how you brought up Bruce, it's so the people in the back can see you. How difficult was it to convince Bruce to give? He doesn't give his rights to his music and lyrics that easily.
Well, I'm as amazed as anyone else as to how this film happened. I mean, when I look back at it now, I'm like, Jesus, really? That's how we made it? I mean, what happened was Safraz and I were friends because he was a Bruce Springsteen fan, and so was I. And I'd liked Bruce Springsteen since I was 16. And I saw an article written by him in a paper, and I was like, oh my God, there's another Asian person who likes Bruce Springsteen in Britain. And so we became friends, and then he said he's writing a memoir, and I said, great, let me have a look at it. And he gave me the memoir, and I said, this is great, and I know how to turn it into a good film, but without Bruce and Bruce's music and Bruce's permission, there's nothing. You don't have a film here. And 2 years later, Bruce released The Promise, and he was coming to London for a premiere, and I got invited, and I took Safraz as my +1, and we both stood on the red carpet, and we both had our flip cameras with us at that time, and the idea was that he stood on that side, I stood on this side, and when Bruce was going to walk past, we were both going to film and be like that, like in the frame with Bruce, you know, as we went past. So we were being real nerdy fans at that point. But we didn't know we were going to get to talk to him or anything, but we just thought, let's get a picture first and then we'll see. And actually what happened as Bruce came down the red carpet, people were clapping and cheering, and we were getting very excited as fans. And then a miracle happened. Safraz caught Bruce's eye, and Bruce recognized Safraz because he'd seen him in 150 concerts, you know, in the front. And Bruce walked over, and I saw him walking over, and I ran over as well. And I was still filming, and I did some beautiful shots of Bruce's chest, because I was like not even, you know, I was not even, so it's all his chest as he's talking to us. And he said to Safraz, hey man, I read your book. It's really beautiful. And Safraz was like, oh my God, you read it? How did you read it? When did you find the time? Who sent it to you? All this. And then I was like, okay, I've got about 3 seconds to make a movie deal right now on the red carpet. And like, he was having hysterics. John Landau, all the managers were trying to move Bruce along down the carpet. And then I just went, and I didn't sound I'm going to make it sound professional, but it wasn't. On the day, it was like, hi Bruce, I'm Gurinder Chadha. And I actually said, I'm Gurinder, I made Bend It Like Beckham. And I'm so glad you've read the book. We really want to make a film of it, but we can't do it without your support. Will you support us? And he sort of looked at me, and he looked at Safraz, and he went, sounds good, talk to John. And then I was like, huh? And he walked on. Meanwhile, Safraz is like a pool on the floor. And then John Landau goes, huh? What? What book? What are you talking about? And then Safraz pulled a book out of his back pocket. Pulled the book out and he gave it to John Landau. And then Tracy Nurse was with them. And I sort of knew Tracy from before. And then she's Bruce's other manager. And I kept in touch with her. And I said, what should we do? And he said, it sounds good. You should write a script. So I was like, really? And she said, yeah. And then we wrote a script, and we had to make sure that the script was something that he would love. I mean, that's it. I didn't think about financiers, nobody. I just said, right, will Bruce like this script? And that's it. And there were things we took out because I thought he wasn't going to like. There are things that are in there that I thought, oh, you know, I wrote the scene where his friend, you know, where Javid quotes Born to Run, you know, one day we'll walk in the sun, till then tramps like this baby were born to run. And his friend says, did you write that? I told you your lyrics were shit. And I thought that was a very funny thing, but I didn't know if Bruce would like it. But I kept it in. So we had a little bit of self-disparaging moments, but we sent the script off, and about 3 weeks later, Tracy called back and said, he's read the script. And I was like, oh. And I said, like, what did he say? And she said, he just said, I'm all good with this. And I said, like, he likes the script. She said, yeah. He said, I'm all good with this. So I said, so, like, what does that mean? And she said, he said he's all good with this. And so I said, so can I have the songs? Can I make the movie? Will he give me the songs? And she said, yeah. He said, I'm all good with this. Go make your movie. And then what he actually did say, she told me later, is he said, give her everything she wants. Bruce! And then he never interfered with anything. He just gave us, said whatever she wants, give her. And you know, he was writing his book at the time, you know, so he was going through stuff himself. It hadn't come out at that point, but obviously he was on his own journey. And then he didn't, as I say, didn't interfere with anything. There was the moment though that I was worried about in the rally, as you call it, because I wanted to use Jungle Land there, and I'd always, from the moment I wrote the script, that scene, I knew I wanted to use Jungle Land there, but I needed to cut the song to make it work. But everywhere else, I never cut the song. I never cut any songs. I made them work as they were. But that I needed to cut the saxophone and the piano together with the last verse. And so I went to New York, and he was on Broadway, and after the show, he went, oh, how's it going? And I said, good. I said, but I need to ask you if I can do something to one song. And I said that we have a scene with the National Front, who are the fascists in England, and the Racist Party, and we've got a scene where they're marching, and I really want to use the saxophone from Jungle Land over that, the last verse, and the saxophone, because it's so euphoric, and I want to undercut the hate with that euphoria, but I need your permission. And he went, I think Clarence would love that. Isn't that sweet? And I was like floored by that. It's so gorgeous. And he said, I think Clarence would really love that. And so that is literally his only involvement in the film, was saying that. And then, of course, when I finished the film and I had my director's cut, I said, I need to show it to Bruce. He didn't ask to see it.
My next question. Well, what
happened?
What was that like?
So I said, I need to go to New York. I need to show it to him because I cannot bear the stress of putting out the film without him seeing it and all his life's work sort of flashing in front of him in some horrible English, you know, town, sort of like Born to Run. You know, what I did with Born to Run, I didn't know if he might have hated it, because it was, you know, Luton is voted as the crappiest place to live in England by people from Luton, you know. So, you know, it's not exactly, you know, well, anyway, I went to New York, and we sat in a room, and John Landau and his other managers were there, and Bruce came in and said, okay, let's see the movie. And I sort of sat in the back. And then the movie started, and I couldn't bear it being in the back. So I moved forward, and I sat sort of diagonally behind him, and I was sort of watching him, and all I could see was his crow's feet here. So I could see when he was smiling like that, and then I could see when he was like that. And so I sort of tried to watch the film through him. And it was, you know, it's really interesting because there were things that he was really like taking in, and he laughed at all the self-disparaging jokes. He laughed at the, is that Billy Joel? He thought that was very funny. And so a few things like that he laughed at. The Bhangra scene, the daytime scene, he was very confused. And he sort of looked at John and he was like, what's this about? And then, of course, his song comes in. He's listening to Because the Night, and then he was like, oh, okay, that's smart. And then at the very end, there was absolute silence, because none of the managers said anything until Bruce spoke, and Bruce didn't say anything. And so I was like, okay, I'm going to go up, I'm going to put the lights on, get my tape, and go and stand outside so they can all talk, because I figured they needed to talk without me being there. So I went down, and I actually tripped over a step. It was so uncool. Anyway, I tripped over a step, and I got to the light, turned it on, and over here I saw him walking towards me, and then he walked over and he gave me a huge kiss and a big hug, and he said in my ear, he said, "Thank you for looking after me so beautifully. Thank you." And then we sat down, and then he went through all the things that he really appreciated about the film. It was wonderful, wonderful.
The character of Miss Clay, is that based on a true story?
It's sort of based on true story, but then we embellished her.
Because it's such an incredible character that she is the solution with the political system, and how her students are being deprived from a free education.
Yes.
And so there was a real Miss Clay.
There was a teacher, yeah. Like we all had teachers that inspired us, but there was a teacher, and actually he's a man, and I met him in Luton actually, but we had to make her stronger in terms of our story narrative. So,
and then tell us about working, not only you have Bruce Springsteen's music, but then you engage A.R. Rahman to do the orchestral score as well. Academy Award winner, A.R. Rahman.
I just made a movie with him, Viceroy's House. And so A.R. and I had got very close on that. And with this film, I said, there's not a lot of score, but there are moments. And it'd be wonderful if you'd like to do it, A.R. And he's obviously a big fan of Bruce's, and he just loved the movie. That was the thing for him. He loved the movie, and then he came in and he did Javed's theme. Mm-hmm. He did Javed's theme, and then he did the song. And I think we turned it off before the end, but it's right at the end. It comes on, and it's Javed's theme, and then there's a whole sort of Pakistani vocal thing that kicks off in that. And so the song was a big hit in India. And I think it's in the Billboard. They've picked it as one of the good songs for the award season. Yeah.
And tell us about casting Javed. I'm going to butcher his name, Vivek Kalra.
Yeah. So Vivek was at college, and he auditioned with several other young men, and out of the guys that auditioned, 2 were really good, and it was between Vivek and another guy. And what I did both of them read their scenes really well, and I was kind of torn. And then what I did in the second audition was I put Born to Run on. And I said, okay, what would you do when this, show me what your character would do with this. And they were like, what the fuck is that song? I've never heard of that song. Because of course they don't know Bruce Springsteen. Vivek had never heard him. And so he did some good acting. So he closed his eyes and got lost in it. And it was great. And I felt that he could write poetry, and that's why I cast him. He just felt like someone who would write poetry, because the other kid who was equally good, I felt, couldn't write poetry, and that's who I cast then as Roops. So I cast them both, yeah.
And tell us about working with your costume designer, Annie Harding, because the costumes tell so much of the story. I love the fact that Eliza and Javed goes through a complete transformation, and then also you incorporate so much of the traditional Pakistani costumes as well. Yeah,
the costume. Well, any period film costume is critical. And we had a lot of fun, with these clothes. And what was fun was, of course, the youngsters just hated them. They were like, oh. And Vivek was like, I'm going to burn this jumper, And I was trying to give him a gift, of that horrible patterned thing. And but it was funny. But, in all seriousness, the production design as well, That and the combination of the costumes really sets the tone very quickly, and the place. And we all, have great memory recall when we see a pattern in a particular way. So I think Annie and Nick, my production designer, did a great job of not just bringing back the 80s, but a particular period of poverty in the 80s. These are people who couldn't afford really fancy clothes, so it was sort of a little bit down at heels 80s as well, which is different. And sometimes it was a problem for me because, as the directors in the room will know that sometimes you will shoot a scene in a particular way, and then when you're in the edit, you want to use it in a completely different place. And so when I was shooting some of the scenes up on the hill, we had to do them pre-Bruce and post-Bruce. So pre-Bruce, Vivek had a hairpiece, and then post-Bruce, he has more trendier hair and different clothes. But I knew that there were some sequences that I didn't know where they were going to go, but I needed them. And so I was able to get a jacket with a hood on it. And so there's a scene where he's writing quite early on, and he's got a hood on, and that sort of saved me from being at that end or that end. But then in the end, the very last moment when he does go up to the hill before he goes to America, I really wanted that moment there, but I didn't have him in pre-Bruce clothes. I only had him in post-Bruce clothes. And I said, I don't care, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. And I don't know if anyone ever notices, but I said, no one will notice. And so sometimes, when you do period stuff, you lose a bit of flexibility.
Well, it's such a beautiful film. And one of the things I love about it is that we're used to seeing these films about dreams and dreamers, but there is this bitter sweetness about this character that he understands that the dream may not come true, and because of who he is and his cultural and the economic background, it's really touching.
You mean the dad?
Yeah, correct.
Yeah. When we shot that scene, you hear Independence Day, and the dad is walking from the job centre, the unemployment centre, that was really sad, and a lot of people started crying on the crew, the way the way Kulvinder did that. And for Kulvinder, a lot of it was about his own dad and channeling that and some of his hardships. So it's a very personal, story for a lot of the cast. It's very truthful.
Well, thank you so much for being here,
Thank you.
Kulvinder.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you.